This is former Vice President Joe Biden. The month of June 2020 was interesting for old Sleepy Joe, and I thought it would be worth it to take a look back on all of the June highlights. On June 1st, Joe Biden met with community leaders in a church in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, while the event was a press opportunity for Biden, neither he nor the church set up a sound system so that the participants could hear each other.
No microphones because that's COVID-19 protocol. You can't use microphones, so use your outside voice.
He's referring to the guidance put forward by the Delaware Department of Health and Social Services for communities of worship. While the guidance states that handheld microphones may not be passed between individuals, it's not outright prohibiting microphones because the guidance clearly states that all microphones, whether they be self-standing in holders, handheld, or lapel style, must be sanitized after each use. So while handheld microphones are prohibited, there is nothing stopping them from using a microphone at a podium and then wiping it down each time. In fact, the guidance clearly states that staff, religious leaders, readers, and singers may address the congregation from a podium as long as there is social distancing and wearing a face mask. The guidance also states cloth face coverings must be worn for inside services at all times. But instead of following that protocol, when each participant spoke, they removed their mask to speak. The entire point of a mask is that when you breathe and speak, it traps the droplets that escape from your nose and mouth. So pulling the mask down to talk negates the entire point of wearing it. Now, Joe Biden constantly criticizes the president for not wearing a mask. So you'd think that Biden would have had a problem with everyone in the church not wearing their mask, right? Right? Instead, when Joe Biden stands up to speak, he also puts his mask under his chin. Then he walks up and down the church aisle without a mask in front of his nose and mouth and gives a speech just feet away from parishioners for more than 11 minutes.
I've kind of had the mask pulled off.
Aha! You see what happened there? He thought about saying the word mask in his address to the audience and was like, oopsie, and then he put the mask back on because he remembered that he needs to virtue signal. Anyway, the highlight of his speech was when he spoke about a dubious police tactic.
And the idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop who's an unarmed person coming at him with a knife or something to shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart is a very different thing.
An unarmed person with a knife? Not sure how that works. To be perfectly honest, I'm surprised that Biden didn't say that you should just shoot the knife out of their hand.
And talking to an awful lot of the police, there's a lot that can be done. A lot that can be done.
There are things that can be done regarding police reform, but I can guarantee you that no one from any police department is telling Biden that you can train officers to aim at their legs. And if they are, that person should be immediately fired and banned from law enforcement. So at the end of the event, everyone got together for a photo, which of course was against Delaware state guidelines. At all times, individuals who are not part of the same household should maximize physical distance from others and remain at least 6 feet apart. This is not social distancing, and if they were really worried about following protocol, they wouldn't have held the event at all. Then, on June 4th, Joe Biden held a virtual town hall hosted by actor Don Cheadle for some reason. Biden started off by talking about unity and bringing people together.
You know, I really do believe, I don't want to proselytize, but I do believe we're all God's children for real. The vast majority of people are decent. We have to appeal to that, and we have to unite people, bring them together.
Now, watch this message of unity turn into a message of division.
There are probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people out there that are just not very good people.
So what Biden is saying is that as many as 49 million people in the United States are just not very good people. This type of statement is shocking and should disqualify him from the presidency. But instead, this town hall participant shakes his head in total agreement. He's not even questioning it.
I'm not going to fan the flames of hate. I'm going to speak to heal racial differences.
But remember, we're all God's children. Well, except for the not very good people. Got it. Anyway, a week later, Biden attended a roundtable at the Enterprise Center in Philadelphia.
You know, the rapidly rising
They don't call him Sleepy Joe for nothing. So, days prior to this roundtable, President Trump announced that he was going to hold a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on June 19th. Apparently, the 19th is a state holiday in Texas known as Juneteenth. On that day in 1865, Union Army General Gordon Granger announced federal orders in Galveston proclaiming that all slaves in Texas were free. And for some reason, many were outraged that President Trump would schedule a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on the day of a Texas state holiday. But let's be honest, it's unlikely that Trump knew the significance behind Juneteenth, let alone that it actually existed. And I know that I've never heard of it because I live in New York, and that's where President Trump is from. I also conducted a very scientific poll on my community page, and it turns out that most of my viewers didn't know what Juneteenth was until activists in the media made a big deal about the timing of the rally. So it's very likely that you had never heard of Juneteenth. But to be fair, Joe Biden doesn't know what Juneteenth is either.
He's going down to Texas on Juneteenth, right? The first major massacre, literally speaking, of the Black Wall Street, right?
Wrong. First off, the rally was in Oklahoma, not Texas.
He's going down to Texas on Juneteenth, right?
Second, the tragic event that Biden is referring to has nothing to do with Juneteenth.
The first major massacre, literally speaking, of the Black Wall Street, right?
Wrong. Clearly, Juneteenth isn't what Biden thinks it is.
And he doesn't wear a mask, and he doesn't think this, I mean, come on.
And like the church event from earlier, Biden isn't wearing a mask while talking to people sitting directly across from him who are also not wearing masks. And the same thing happened at this roundtable days later.
The president doesn't wear one, so why would anybody
Correct.
need one?
So he bitches about the president not wearing a mask around others while he himself pulls his mask down while around others. This is typical do as I say, not as I do malarkey. After the roundtable, Biden delivered some remarks directly to President Trump.
I'm ready on day one after more than 3 years in office. Why isn't Donald Trump ready? Mr. President, wake up.
Sleepy Joe telling Trump to wake up is the equivalent of a very out-of-shape person giving a professional athlete fitness tips. Also, he read those two sentences weird. Just watch the subtitles to see what I mean.
I'm ready on day one after more than 3 years in office. Why isn't Donald Trump ready?
It sounds like Biden is saying that he has more than 3 years in office and is asking why Donald Trump isn't ready. Anyway, that's how my brain works. June 23rd was the day of Joe Biden's virtual fundraiser featuring former President Barack Obama. And as you'll see, Biden is just as coherent as ever.
Stop the Cold War future that we're talking about. We're talking about a peaceful Cold War. What are we talking about?
I don't know. So, during the town hall, Biden and Obama were supposed to answer some pre-recorded questions, but it appears that Biden thought that the questions were being asked in real time.
Now, there's another question. I think we have a question coming up now from someone else. Is that true? Am I correct?
Hi,
about
President
that?
Obama and VP Biden. My name is Flor Garcia. I'm from Seattle, Washington. My question to you is, what are you going to do to make the healthcare system more accessible to people of color?
You're an ICU nurse, aren't you? Is that what I was told?
And then he did it again.
Look, we have one last question, and I'm not sure who has it, but this is the last question we're going to have. I'd like to invite the next questioner to speak up.
They can't respond to your comment, Joe. It's pre-recorded. Don't you love that this is the guy that's leading in the polls and could beat Trump in November? No, not scary at all. Next, Biden gave an address about healthcare and unfairly criticized Trump for the dumbest thing.
Then 5 days ago, at his campaign rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, he admitted telling people, and I quote, "We have to slow the testing down. Slow it down, please." He actually said it.
Yes, Trump did say that, but Trump was clearly joking. Take a look.
Here's the bad part. When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people. You're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
Was it funny? For sure. Was it a smart thing for Trump to say? Of course not. Because immediately after he said it, he was attacked for it.
The president, he says the quiet part loud. He just admits things and dares people to do something about it.
Ugh, fake news CNN. Anyway, as far as Biden's 18-minute healthcare address, well, it was overshadowed by what he said at a meeting with families just moments before. Let's watch.
And a lot of people you have unnecessarily. Now we have over 120 million dead from COVID.
Wow, huge if true. But, this wouldn't be the first time that Biden has had problems with numbers.
150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. More than all the wars. It would put 720 million women back in the workforce. I commuted every single solitary day to Wilmington, Delaware, over 500 miles a day. 250 miles a day. And the fact is that we are in a situation where you have the president making clear that he doesn't want any part of me being his opponent. He's spending $125,000 this week to keep me from being an opponent.
So, while in Philadelphia during an interview with KDKA, Biden was asked what he would do differently than President Trump if he became president tomorrow.
If you became president tomorrow, what would you do differently regarding the pandemic and getting these surging cases now under control?
Well, number one, to state the I'm not. This is not second guessing, but I said at the time I would have done a lot of things differently than he did to get us to this place. Number one, a president's job is to lead, not to run away from responsibility. This president says, "Not my responsibility. I'm not responsible, I'm not the one," etc.
The question was, what would you do differently? But instead of giving a look into how Biden would lead the country, Biden can't shut up about Trump.
And the president's supposed to lead. Number one, as they pointed out in the beginning, what happened was that we're up to over 125,000 dead now. We're in a position where it was said when it was 100,000 dead from COVID, Columbia University said if he acted just 1 week earlier, 35,000 more people would be alive.
45 seconds into his answer, and he's talking about hypotheticals. And KDKA's Ken Rice has had enough.
Forgive me, my time is so short here. I'm not asking you to go back in hindsight. I'm saying if you became president tomorrow with the situation as it is today, what would you do differently?
I would go back to making sure that everybody had masks, that you had PPE lined up. We have been making sure we stockpile all the things that we need that we don't have now.
But the Trump administration is already doing that, you dummy.
Some kind of a federal mandate on masks?
You can't make a federal mandate, but I would insist that, in fact, there would be masks. I'd lay out a plan, a detailed plan, which I have laid out in detail.
Wouldn't you use your federal leverage to mandate that, though?
Yes.
And would you?
Yes, I would. From an executive standpoint, yes, I would.
So you would, in effect, mandate the wearing of masks?
I would do everything on my possible to make it required that people had to wear masks in public.
Within a 30-second period, President Biden says that you can't have a federal mandate on masks, but then he says, yes, there would be a federal mandate on masks. That is the quickest flip-flop in the history of flip-flops. Even if you decreed that everyone wear a mask in public, how would you enforce it? It's not a federal issue. It's a state and local issue. Then Joe Biden put out this tweet saying, "Wear a mask," with a picture of Joe wearing a hat that looks like it got covered in dog hair after it fell under a couch. Maybe his team thinks that dog hair makes him more relatable or more presidential or something, I don't know. On the last day of June, Biden held his first press conference in nearly 3 months, and it was as softball as you can get.
He gave me a list of how to recognize. Is Alex AP out there? I was told NBC, Mike.
Oh, good grief.
That mask is not so much to protect me. It's if I have an undiagnosed, I have it. It's to protect you against me. It's to protect other people.
Said the genius who constantly pulls his mask down around other people. Why is no one calling him out on this? Then Biden was asked about protesters pulling down controversial statues, and of course, he gave a confusing answer.
I can understand the anger and anguish that people feel by having, for years and years, been under the statue of Robert E. Lee, who, if you're an African American. So it's a difference. It's always better to do it peacefully, but there's a distinction.
It's better for local officials to take these statues down, but if protesters tear them down, they tear them down, whatever.
Don't be surprised if someone pulls down the statue of Jefferson Davis. It's better that they do not, but it's fundamentally different than pulling down the statue or going into the Lincoln Memorial and trying to pull, not Lincoln Memorial. That's a bad example. The Jefferson Memorial and grabbing Jefferson off his chair.
The statue in the Jefferson Memorial isn't sitting, so you can't grab him from his chair. Oh, what's the point anymore? And finally, we pivot to VP Biden's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, who just published a new book.
It has been a busy few months for former Second Lady Dr. Jill Biden. Aside from campaigning with her husband, she's also found some time to write a children's book about the presumptive Democratic nominee's life. It's called Joey.
Yes, Dr. Jill Biden wrote a children's book about her husband.
I'm not exactly sure how you found time to write a children's book about your husband, but these are extraordinary times.
Doesn't take much to impress Craig Melvin, does it? Gee, Dr. Jill, how did you ever find the time to write a 48-page, 1,900-word children's book while also being VP Biden's carer? How did you do it? But my first question is that while I see you show that Joe is a lifeguard, there's no mention of his confrontation with Corn Pop. Seems like a missed opportunity. Oh, I'm sorry, but we're out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. Jill. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe to the channel and follow me on Twitter and/or Parler at Don't Walk Run. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and I hope to see y'all next time. Bye, Dr. Jill.